Hey there, and welcome to Brada Tales. Tonight, we bring you a chilling collection of horror stories set against the soothing sound of rain. Before we dive into suspense, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. If these stories send shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Get comfortable, let the fear slowly take over, and tell us if you enjoy this kind of storytelling. Now sit back and relax, we're about to begin. Have you ever felt like the road was watching you? The night air hung heavy with an unsettling silence. I was driving through Nevada, the headlights of my car cutting through the dark like a knife. The asphalt stretched ahead, smooth and unyielding, a familiar path that had become eerily lonely. As I navigated the winding curves, I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, an instinctual warning that something was amiss. I glanced in the rear-view mirror. Nothing but shadows loomed behind me. I turned my attention back to the road, the tires humming softly against the pavement. It was just me and the midnight sky, the stars twinkling like distant eyes, indifferent to my presence. I was used to this isolation, a student of long nights and quiet drives. But tonight felt different. The air felt thick, charged with an unnamable tension. It started with a whisper of movement on the roadside. A figure. A hitchhiker standing there in tattered clothing that looked decades old. My heart raced. I had heard stories about this stretch of highway, rumors of ghostly travelers who vanished as quickly as they appeared. I tried to shake off the chill creeping up my spine. It was just a story. Just a person in need. I slowed down, my mind a jumble of curiosity and fear. The figure stepped closer, illuminated by my headlights. It was a man, his face gaunt and pale, eyes sunken deep. He raised his hand, fingers trembling slightly, as if beckoning me to stop. I hesitated. The stories flooded back, hitchhikers who dissolved into the night, leaving nothing but cold air and confusion behind. The man's eyes were unsettling. They held a kind of sadness that felt almost tangible. I forced myself to look away, but my foot hovered over the brake. A voice inside me whispered to keep driving, to avoid the unknown. But another part, a more compassionate part, urged me to help. As I pulled over, the man approached my window. "Can you take me to the next town?" His voice was raspy, as if it had not been used in years. "Sure," I said, though my heart thumped violently against my ribs. I unlocked the doors, and he slid into the passenger seat. The moment he was inside, the air shifted. It became colder, denser. I glanced at him, and for a brief second I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes, an ancient sadness, a haunting loss. We drove in silence, the only sound the rhythmic hum of the engine. I could feel his gaze on me, heavy and expectant. I glanced at him again. There was something off about his appearance. His clothes looked like they belonged to another era, frayed and dirty. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but the darkness seemed to close in around us. "What happened to you?" I asked, breaking the silence. He turned to me slowly, his expression unreadable. "Just passing through," he replied, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. But there was a hollow quality to his smile, as if it was practiced and not genuine. The highway stretched endlessly, the lights of my car casting long shadows that danced on the pavement. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, static filling the air, a haunting melody that seemed to seep into the very fabric of the night. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. This was no ordinary hitchhiker. I could sense it deep within me. I took a deep breath, trying to quell my rising panic. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, the silence between us stretching thin. "Names don't matter." "Not out here," he said cryptically, his gaze shifting to the window as if something outside had caught his attention. A chill ran through me as I followed his gaze. The road appeared to twist and turn in unnatural ways, shadows flitting just out of sight. I felt a surge of paranoia. The darkness felt alive, pulsating around us. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, like a wind carried from far away. The words were indistinct, but they coiled around me, tightening like a noose. My heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. Just then, the hitchhiker turned to me, and for a brief moment, I saw something shift in his expression. Was it fear? No, something darker, an emptiness that sent shivers down my spine. The tension in the car thickened, and I realized that I was not just driving down a lonely road. I was on a precipice, teetering between the world I knew and something unfathomable lurking just beyond the edge. I felt the urge to ask him to get out. But I was frozen, caught in the web of my own curiosity and fear. The road ahead felt endless, and with it came the promise of unknown horrors that whispered through the night. As we drove deeper into the darkness, the shadows began to close in. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that sent my heart racing. I was no longer just a traveler on a quiet road. I had become part of a story that was unfolding, a story I had only heard in hushed tones. And I was terrified of what would come next. The whispers intensified, wrapping around us like a suffocating fog. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. The hitchhiker remained silent, his gaze fixed on the road ahead, but I could feel the weight of his presence pressing down on me. I dared not glance at him again. I needed to focus. I needed to stay rational. But how could I? The shadows outside seemed to dance with a life of their own, and every flicker of movement in the periphery made my heart leap into my throat. The darkness pressed against the windows, blocking out the world I knew. It was as if the road itself was becoming a living entity, drawing me into its depths, where unknown horrors awaited. I tried to break the suffocating silence. "Where exactly are you going?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. He turned his head slowly, his face partially illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard lights. "To the place where the road ends," he replied, a cryptic smile tugging at his lips. My stomach nodded. "What do you mean?" He let out a hollow laugh that echoed in the confines of the car. "This road has many secrets. Not all who travel it return." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Some become part of the whispers." I shuddered, a chill running down my spine. It was one thing to hear tales of vanishing hitchhikers. It was another to sit next to one. The stories had always felt distant, like folklore designed to scare children. But now, as I drove deeper into the night, the line between reality and myth blurred terrifyingly. The radio crackled again, and for a moment the static morphed into a melody, a haunting tune that felt familiar yet unsettling. It was a song from my childhood, one my grandmother used to sing. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, quickly followed by an icy dread. Why was this song playing now? It felt like a warning. "Turn it off," the hitchhiker said suddenly, his voice sharp. "You don't want to hear that." I glanced at him, startled. The air in the car had thickened, a heavy tension coiling around us. I fumbled with the knobs and killed the radio. Silence descended again, but the whispers outside grew louder, as if the night itself was alive, calling out to me. I stole another look at the hitchhiker. His expression had darkened, shadows flickering across his face like fleeting memories. "You shouldn't have stopped," he murmured almost to himself. "You shouldn't have let me in." Panic surged through me. "What do you mean?" I stammered. "You're just a hitchhiker, right? Just someone looking for a ride." His laughter sent a shiver down my spine. "I am many things, but you must understand the road is a trap. It takes what it needs." I glanced at the speedometer, my foot pressing harder on the accelerator. The needle hovered above 80 miles per hour, but it felt like I was crawling. The landscape blurred outside, the occasional silhouette of a tree or a rock fading into the void. The road felt endless, each stretch of asphalt melding into the next, a dark ribbon unraveling into oblivion. Then a shadow flickered just ahead. I squinted through the windshield, heart racing. Was it another hitchhiker? The figure appeared on the side of the road, indistinct but somehow familiar. I felt an irresistible pull to stop. "Don't," the hitchhiker shouted, his voice suddenly urgent. "Keep driving." But the figure lingered in my mind, a shadow that echoed my thoughts. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the pavement, and came to a halt. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation. "I have to know," I whispered, my voice trembling. I looked at the hitchhiker, searching for answers in his hollow gaze. "Who is it?" "It's not what you think," he replied, his voice low, almost pleading. "This is how it begins." I opened the door, the night air rushing in like a wave. The figure stood a few feet away, barely illuminated by the moonlight. It was a woman, her long hair flowing like wisps of smoke. She wore a vintage dress, reminiscent of another time, the fabric tattered and torn. My heart raced. I knew her face, an old friend who had vanished years ago, lost to the whispers of the night. "Help me," she called softly, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "Anna," I gasped, stepping closer, drawn by a force beyond my control. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to get away from the hitchhiker and this apparition. But my heart ached to reach her. "No," the hitchhiker shouted, his voice piercing through the darkness. "Don't you say. She is not real. This road is deceiving." I hesitated, caught between the past and the terrifying present. Anna's eyes were filled with a longing that mirrored my own. "Please don't leave me," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I'm lost." "Stay away from her," the hitchhiker warned, but his words felt distant, as if the very fabric of reality was warping around us. I took another step toward Anna, the shadows around her seeming to pulse. She reached out a hand, and I felt an overwhelming urge to grasp it. I could almost hear the whispers more clearly now, swirling in the air, beckoning me closer. Suddenly the darkness shifted, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. My heart pounded as I turned back to the hitchhiker, whose face twisted with desperation. "You have to choose," he yelled, panic etched across his features. "If you go to her, you may never return." The weight of his words crashed over me like a wave. I stood at a crossroads, a battle raging inside me. The night was alive with uncertainty, and the whispers grew louder, a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. Time stretched, moments turning into an eternity. I could either reach out for the past and embrace that promised comfort, or heed the warning of the hitchhiker, who was not what he seemed. The shadows pressed closer, and I realized, whatever I chose, the road would always claim its price. The air crackled with tension as I stood at the edge of a decision, the weight of the moment heavy on my shoulders. Anna's face was a mirror of longing, her eyes reflecting the dreams I had lost in the chaos of life. The hitchhiker, meanwhile, was a dark specter of urgency, his voice cutting through the haze of nostalgia that enveloped me. "Do not let her draw you in," he shouted, his desperation palpable. "She is a phantom, a reflection of your own grief. The road feeds on that pain." But how could I believe him? Anna was right there, so close I could almost touch her. I fought to swallow the lump in my throat, my heart aching with a mix of hope and dread. She had been my friend, my confidant, someone I had lost to the shadows of time. "Anna," I whispered, my voice barely escaping my lips. "Is it really you?" "Yes," she breathed, stepping forward, the moonlight casting a silver glow around her. "I've been waiting for you. I'm trapped in this place, and I need you to help me." Every word she spoke felt like a thread weaving a tapestry of memories I thought I had buried. But the hitchhiker's voice sliced through that tapestry, unraveling it before my eyes. "Listen to me. If you touch her, you'll become part of this road. You'll be lost forever." My pulse quickened. The shadows around Anna shifted, swirling like a storm gathering strength. I could feel the cold air creeping into my bones, a reminder that this moment held more weight than I could bear. The whispers grew louder, a sinister symphony urging me to give in. I glanced back at the hitchhiker. His expression was a mixture of fear and determination, as if he knew the true horror of what lay ahead. "You need to leave her behind. She is a ghost, and this road is a trap." "But I can save her," I shouted back, my voice rising in defiance. "I can bring her back." "No," he yelled, his eyes wild. "You can't save what's already lost. You'll only find despair." As the tension between us crackled, I felt the ground beneath me shift. The asphalt seemed to ripple, the road itself trembling with an unseen force. The shadows flickered, and I caught glimpses of other faces, people trapped in the night, lost souls forever reaching for something they could never grasp. "Anna," I cried out, torn between two worlds. Her face shimmered with an ethereal light, but the darkness around her pulsed like a living entity, hungry and relentless. "What happened to you?" "I can't remember," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I feel trapped here. You're my only hope." In that moment, a realization washed over me. It wasn't just about her, it was about my own struggle with the past. The guilt, the regret, it was all swirling inside me, feeding the very shadows that sought to claim us both. "Please come with me," I said, my voice breaking. "We can leave this place together. We can find a way out." A flicker of hope sparked in her eyes, but it quickly dimmed. I don't think I can. The road has taken too much from me. It won't let me go. As I took a hesitant step toward her, the hitchhiker lunged, grabbing my arm. Don't. You'll lose yourself. His grip was firm, but I felt a strange pull toward Anna, as if the very fabric of our connection was binding us in a way that transcended the physical. My heart raced as I looked back at her, desperation mingling with love. I won't abandon you. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed into a chaotic symphony, a cacophony of despair that shook the night. I felt my resolve weaken, the darkness wrapping around me like a shroud. Help me please, Anna cried, and the urgency in her voice shattered my hesitation. In that moment, I made my choice. I tore my arm away from the hitchhiker's grasp and stepped forward, closing the distance between us. I'm here. I won't leave you. But as my fingers reached for hers, the shadows surged forward, swirling and coiling like smoke. I felt a coldness seep into my very being, a realization that struck like lightning. This was a mistake. No, I shouted, panic gripping me. The road beneath us began to shift, the surface writhing like a living thing. Anna's face morphed, her features becoming indistinct as the darkness engulfed her. The hitchhiker's eyes widened in horror. You must go. Now, he yelled, his voice nearly drowned out by the whispers that swirled around us. But it was too late. As I grasped her hand, the shadows closed in, pulling me deeper into the night. A wave of terror washed over me, and I felt my body being torn apart by the forces surrounding us. The road was alive, hungry, and I was caught in its grasp. With a surge of strength, I yanked my hand away, stumbling back. I gasped for breath, heart racing, as I watched Anna fade into the darkness. Her eyes filled with sorrow, and I felt an unbearable weight settle in my chest. No, I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. I can't lose you. But she was slipping away, her form dissolving into the swirling shadows. The whispers intensified, wrapping around me like chains, their icy grip tightening with every passing second. I turned to the hitchhiker, panic flooding my senses. What do I do? How do I escape this? He looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and fear. You must face the truth. The road will not release you until you confront your pain. It feeds on your regret. I felt the weight of his words settle in my gut. I was not just battling the shadows, I was wrestling with my own fears, my own failures. The road had been a place of solace, but now it had become a prison, a reminder of everything I had lost. The darkness swirled around me, threatening to pull me under, but I steadied myself. I couldn't let it consume me. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I focused on the memories of Anna, the laughter, the joy, the moments we had shared. I remembered the warmth of friendship, the light she had brought into my life. Anna, I shouted into the void. I remember you. I won't forget. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if my words had struck a chord. I could feel the whispers shift, their tone changing from seductive to mournful. Fight, the hitchhiker urged. You can break free, but you must confront your own darkness. As the shadows coiled around me, I took a deep breath and faced the darkness head-on. I lost you, but I refused to lose myself, I cried out. I will not let this road take my memories or my heart. The shadows seemed to tremble at my declaration, flickering and swirling as if caught in a storm. I felt the grip of despair loosening, the whispers growing fainter. And then with one final push, I shouted, "I choose to remember. I choose to live." In that moment, a blinding light burst forth, illuminating the night. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the brightness. I felt a surge of warmth wash over me, wrapping me in a cocoon of light and hope. As the darkness faded, I caught a final glimpse of Anna, her face now serene, her smile radiant. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a gentle breeze. "Oh, you set me free." And then she was gone, dissolved into the light that enveloped me, leaving only the memory of her laughter behind. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the warmth. When I opened them again, I found myself alone on the road, the hitchhiker gone, the night quiet. The stars twinkled above, the oppressive weight lifted. The road stretched before me, familiar yet transformed. I was free, but I knew I would carry the memory of that night with me forever, a reminder of the shadows that lurked beneath the surface, waiting for the unsuspecting traveler. And as I drove on, I vowed to honor the memories of those lost to the road, to keep their spirits alive in the light. The road before me stretched out, smooth and inviting, but the echoes of the night clung to me like a second skin. As I drove, the memories flooded back, flashes of Anna's laughter, the warmth of our friendship, and the darkness that had almost consumed me. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow, the bittersweet taste of loss lingering on my tongue. With each mile I traveled, I could feel the pulse of the road beneath me, a steady rhythm that reminded me of the life I had fought to reclaim. Yet the whisper of shadows still echoed in my mind, a constant reminder that I had escaped, but the specters of the past were never far behind. The trees lining the road loomed tall and dark, their branches swaying gently in the wind, casting flickering shadows that danced along the pavement. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching, lurking just beyond my sight. My heart raced, the anxiety creeping back into my chest, a familiar companion that never truly left. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the hitchhiker or even Anna lingering in the darkness. But the road was empty, stretching behind me like a forgotten memory. I focused on the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to break. The sky transformed from inky black to a soft lavender, a promise of light that pushed back against the encroaching shadows. Just then, my headlights caught a figure on the side of the road. A woman in tattered clothing stood there, her back turned to me, hair flowing like a dark river. The sight sent a chill through my spine. I felt a pull to stop, an instinctive urge to offer help, but the memories of the night before rushed back, Anna's fading form, the hitchhiker's warnings. I slowed down, the engine humming softly as I approached. She turned slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. Her eyes were hollow, void of light, yet they seemed to bore into my soul. This was not a face of a lost friend. It was a face of despair, of someone trapped in the echoes of the past. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need your help." Every instinct in my body screamed to drive away, to leave the shadows behind. But the empathy that welled up in me was powerful, as if the very essence of my friendship with Anna compelled me to reach out to this woman. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lila," she replied, stepping closer. The moonlight caught her features, revealing the gauntness of her face, the deep lines of sorrow etched into her skin. I've been waiting. I'm lost just like you were. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. This road it takes. It traps souls like us, lost in their own pain. Layla's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I saw what happened to you. I saw you confront the darkness. You can help me too. Help you how? I felt a mix of compassion and fear, the echoes of the hitchhiker's warning still fresh in my mind. Just believe that you can, she said, her voice urgent. This road thrives on doubt. It feeds on fear. You must choose to break free. I hesitated, the memory of my encounter with Anna still vivid. But what if I can't? What if I end up like you? She stepped closer, her breath trembling in the chill of the early morning air. You won't. You've already faced your darkness. You have the strength, but you need to confront your own fears again. It's the only way to truly escape. I felt the weight of her words, a truth that resonated deep within me. I had faced the abyss once, and I had emerged. But was I strong enough to do it again? Could I risk everything for a stranger? The whispers around me began to rise, swirling like a storm, echoing with doubts and fears. You don't know me, I said, my voice shaking. What if you're just another shadow? Layla looked at me, her gaze steady and resolute. Then let me show you. But you must trust me. As I considered her words, I felt the tension in the air shift. The shadows around us began to thicken, creeping closer like a tide rising against the shore. I glanced around, the trees seemed to line in, their branches casting ominous shapes that danced along the road. Okay, I finally said, the decision forming like a beacon of light in the darkness. I'll help you. The moment the words left my mouth, the shadows recoiled, as if stung by my determination. You need to embrace your pain, Lila urged. Speak your truth and let it guide you. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, as I prepared to confront the very fears I had tried to bury. I lost someone dear to me, I began, my voice trembling. Anna, she was my friend. I couldn't save her. I failed her. Leela nodded, her expression softening. You didn't fail her. You fought for her. But you must let go of the guilt. It is what binds you here. I closed my eyes, memories flooding my mind, the laughter, the joy, and the moments of shared dreams. I wish I could have done more, I whispered, feeling the weight of sorrow pressing down on me. I wish I could have saved her. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke the truth I had hidden for too long. I let fear dictate my choices. I thought I could save everyone, but I couldn't save myself. The shadows shivered, the whispers rising to a crescendo. You are stronger than your fear, Leela urged. You can break free. With each word I spoke, I felt the chains of guilt begin to loosen. I am not defined by my failures. I will carry Anna in my heart, but I refuse to be trapped by what I couldn't control. The air around us shimmered, the shadows retreating as light began to seep into the darkness. Layla's eyes sparkled with hope. Yes, let it go. Embrace the light of your truth. With one final surge of energy, I shouted into the void, I choose to live. I choose to remember the love, not the loss. The ground shook beneath us, the road pulsating with energy as the shadows dissipated, swirling away like smoke in the wind. I felt the warmth of the rising sun on my face, the light penetrating the depths of my soul. When then it happened. A wave of warmth enveloped me, washing away the remnants of despair. I felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Lila's form began to shimmer, the darkness around her dissipating. "You did it," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of joy and relief. "You've freed yourself." But before I could respond, she began to fade, her features blurring in the morning light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carried on the breeze. "You have set me free." As the last remnants of darkness vanished, I was left alone on the road, the sun rising in a brilliant display of color. I took a deep breath, the air fresh and crisp, filled with a sense of renewal. The whispers had quieted, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant song of birds greeting the dawn. I had faced the shadows once more and emerged victorious. But as I drove onward, I realized that the journey was far from over. The road held many more stories, many more souls in need of rescue, and I felt a new purpose ignite within me. With every mile, I would remember Anna, Lila, and the countless others who had traveled this path. I would honor their memories, carrying their light within me, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The road would always hold its mysteries, but now I was armed with the knowledge that light could triumph over shadow. As the sun climbed higher, I smiled, feeling the warmth spread through me. The road was no longer just a path. It was a tapestry of connections, a journey of hope and healing. And I was ready to embrace it all. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the desolate highway. The warmth seeped into my bones, a stark contrast to the chill of the shadows I had just banished. As I drove, I felt the vibrations of the road beneath me, a steady reminder of the life I was reclaiming, of the battles I had fought and won. But my heart remained heavy, not from fear, but from a profound sense of purpose. The road had revealed its secrets to me, and I understood now that it was more than a mere stretch of asphalt. It was a passage, a conduit for lost souls seeking redemption. With every passing mile, I contemplated the stories hidden in the silence around me. Who else had walked this path? What other souls were ensnared by the lingering darkness? The thought ignited a fire within me, a determination to help others find their way, just as I had found mine. As I drove, I noticed the landscape shifting subtly. The trees became more sparse, replaced by rocky outcrops and distant hills. I remembered the hitchhikers, their spectral forms haunting the periphery of my mind. What if I encountered another soul in need? Would I be ready to help them? Suddenly my thoughts were interrupted by a sharp sound, a metallic clang that echoed through the quiet. I instinctively slowed down, scanning the roadside for the source. In the distance, I saw something glinting under the sun, something metallic, half buried in the dirt. Curiosity piqued, I pulled over, the crunch of gravel beneath my tires breaking the stillness. As I stepped out of the car, the heat of the day hit me like a wave, but I felt invigorated, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Approaching the object, I discovered it was an old, rusted signpost, barely standing upright. The letters were faded, but I could make out a name, Lost Hollow. A chill ran down my spine. It sounded familiar, a name that whispered of secrets and shadows. I glanced around, feeling a sense of foreboding wash over me. The air was still, the silence deepening, almost suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the very ground beneath my feet held stories of its own. Then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement, a flicker of white. Turning my head sharply, I saw a figure standing a few feet away, partially hidden behind a tree. My heart raced. Was this another ghost? Well, hid, Shikra. Hello, I called out, my voice trembling slightly. Is someone there? The figure stepped forward, revealing a young man, his clothes tattered and worn, much like Lila. His eyes held a haunting sadness, and he looked as if he had been waiting for ages. Please, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, can you help me? I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. What's your name? Ethan, he replied, his gaze searching mine, filled with a desperate hope. I've been trapped here for so long. I need to get home. Home, I echoed, my mind racing with questions. Where is home? He hesitated, looking down at his hands, which trembled slightly. I don't remember. I just know I'm lost. I can feel it. I've been watching the cars pass by, but no one stops. No one ever sees me. I felt a surge of empathy wash over me. I see you, Ethan, I said firmly. What happened? How did you end up here? His expression shifted, the sorrow deepening in his eyes. I was in an accident on this very road. I never made it home. I've been stuck here waiting, hoping someone would stop. A pang of grief pierced my heart as I realized the weight of his words. He was just like Anna, just like Lila, trapped between worlds, a victim of the road's insidious grasp. What can I do? I asked, my voice steadying. How can I help you? You have to remember, he said, his voice urgent. You need to remember your pain, your fear. It's the only way to break free. Help me remember what I lost, and I can find my way home. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. I'll help you, I promised, my determination solidifying. Together we can confront whatever darkness holds you here. Ethan nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. Thank you, he whispered. It means everything. We stood in silence for a moment, the world around us fading into the background as I focused on him, on the sadness and loss etched into his very being. I felt a strange connection, as if our souls resonated with a shared understanding of grief. Think back, I encouraged him gently. What do you remember about that day? The accident. He closed his eyes, a pained expression crossing his face. I was driving home from college, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I had just finished my exams. I was excited to see my family, to celebrate. But he hesitated, the weight of his memories almost too heavy to bear. There was a storm. The roads were slick. I lost control of the car. The last thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass, the world spinning around me. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I listened to his words, the horror of that moment reflecting in my own past. It wasn't your fault, Ethan, I said softly. You did what you could. Sometimes things are beyond our control. He nodded slowly, but the guilt remained etched in his expression. I just wish I could tell them I loved them one last time. I didn't even get to say goodbye. As he spoke, I felt a warmth radiate from within me, a connection that transcended our shared sorrow. Then let's honor that love, I said, feeling the urgency of the moment. Let's show the world that you're still here. You can reach them, Ethan. He looked at me, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. Hell, speak your truth. Call out to them. Let your love break through the veil that binds you. Ethan took a deep breath, his expression shifting as he prepared to confront the pain of his past. Mom. Dad, he called out, his voice echoing through the trees. I'm here. I'm still here. The air shimmered, the world around us vibrating with energy. I felt the power of his words resonate, the call piercing through the veil of silence. I'm so sorry, he shouted, his voice breaking. I love you. I never meant to leave you. As he spoke, the shadows began to swirl, and I sensed a shift in the air. The road felt alive, pulsing with the weight of his emotions. I could see the trees bending, almost as if they were listening, responding to his plea. Ethan, I urged, let it all out. You are not alone in this. Tears streamed down his face, a torrent of grief pouring forth. I miss you. I want to come home. His voice grew stronger, more resolute. I'm still here. I will always be with you. The shadows flickered, retreating as if responding to his call. I felt a warmth envelop us, a protective cocoon that pushed back against the darkness. The atmosphere shifted, the world around us pulsing with life. Then something incredible happened. A soft glow began to materialize in the distance, a light that pierced through the shadows. I could see shapes moving within it, figures bathed in warmth. Ethan's parents, their faces etched with love and longing, emerged from the light. Ethan, his mother cried, her voice filled with joy. We never stopped searching for you. I'm here. I'm here, he shouted, the joy in his voice breaking through the layers of despair. The shadows quaked, the energy in the air crackling with intensity. As they reached for him, I felt the power of their connection, their love transcending the boundaries of life and death. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated emotion, a testament to the strength of bonds that could not be severed. And then, with a brilliant flash of light, the darkness melted away, leaving nothing but the warmth of love surrounding us. Ethan's spirit shimmered, his form glowing with a radiant light as he stepped toward his family. I love you, he called, his voice filled with joy. I'll always be with you. With that, he embraced them, and the world around me dissolved into a sea of light. I stood there, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment, the realization washing over me that love had triumphed over despair once more. As the light faded, I found myself standing alone on the road, the signpost behind me flickering with a gentle glow. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my journey settle into my bones. The road had shown me its power, the beauty of connections that transcended even death. I knew my purpose now. It was to help others find their way, to remind them that they were never truly lost. With renewed determination, I climbed back into my car, my heart swelling with hope. What would you do if you felt eyes watching you, but every time you turned around, there was nothing there? This question hung in the air as I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, the hum of the office surrounding me. I had been working at this firm in Minneapolis for nearly 2 years, and while the job was mundane, it had a certain comfort. But lately, that comfort had begun to fray. It started with the sound. At first, it was just a faint rustling, a soft shuffling that I convinced myself was nothing more than the air vents adjusting. Yet as days turned into weeks, the sound became a constant companion, an unsettling reminder that something was not right. My colleagues brushed it off with nervous laughter, but I could see the flicker of unease in their eyes. We all felt it. My name is Jake, and I was just an average office worker. I was introverted, the kind of person who preferred to blend into the background rather than draw attention. My desk was tucked away in a corner, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and the glow of fluorescent lights. The place smelled like stale coffee and old carpet, but I had grown accustomed to it. However, every evening as I prepared to leave, a strange scent would waft through the air, a mix of something metallic and earthy, like wet soil after a storm. I would glance around, expecting to see someone standing nearby, but I was always alone. The office felt like a labyrinth, the shadows creeping in as the sun dipped below the horizon. One particularly dreary Thursday, the air felt thick, heavy with anticipation. I could hear the faint rustle again, but this time it seemed louder, more pronounced. My heart raced as I glanced at my colleagues, their faces pale as they exchanged wary looks. "Did you hear that?" one of them whispered, the tremor in her voice giving away her fear. I nodded, my throat dry. "It's probably just the ventilation." "Yeah, but it's been happening more often," another chimed in, trying to sound nonchalant but failing miserably. The office fell silent, a collective breath held in uncertainty. Then the shrill sound of the phone broke the tension. I reached for it, my hands shaking slightly as I answered. It was the building manager. "Jake, we need you to check the ventilation system. We've had complaints of strange noises coming from there," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Sure, I can do that," I replied, my stomach twisting in knots. I had done maintenance checks before, but the thought of climbing into those tight spaces, the echoes of the office around me, sent chills down my spine. When the clock struck 6, I grabbed my flashlight and made my way to the maintenance closet. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The access panel was located at the end of the hallway, and as I approached, the air grew colder. The noise from the vents was almost deafening now, a cacophony of hissing and scratching. I hesitated for a moment, peering into the dimly lit shaft. My heart raced as I climbed into the narrow space, feeling the claustrophobia creep in. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the metal walls coated in dust and grime. As I crawled further inside, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I was acutely aware of the silence around me, punctuated only by the eerie sounds echoing from deep within the shaft. And then, just as I was about to turn back, I saw something, a pair of eyes glinting in the darkness. They were watching me, unblinking. My heart stopped. The light flickered, revealing a fleeting glimpse of something pale and thin, pressing against the metal grate. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen. The eyes were wide, filled with an indescribable fear. Before I could react, the figure vanished, slipping into the shadows as if it had never been there at all. I scrambled backward, my pulse pounding in my ears. Jake, a voice called from the hallway, breaking through my paralysis. It was Tom, my supervisor. Are you okay? I fumbled to respond, my throat dry. Why, I saw something. Tom's face morphed into concern. What do you mean? What did you say? I don't know. Just eyes. And then it was gone. He stepped closer, peering into the shaft. Let's get out of here. We can report it to the manager. I nodded, desperate to leave. As we crawled back toward the exit, I felt a strange sensation, as if something was trailing behind me, watching my every move. I didn't dare look back. Once we were back in the safety of the hallway, I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Tom tried to brush it off as a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something was down there, something that had been waiting. The next day, I found myself unable to focus. The office felt different, the air thick with a sense of dread. I noticed my colleagues exchanging nervous glances, whispers echoing around the room. Then midday, Tom approached me with a grave expression. I can't find Mark. He didn't come in today, and his phone goes straight to voicemail. Panic settled over me like a heavy fog. Mark was another technician who had gone into the ventilation system before. What if he had encountered the same thing I had? As the day wore on, the unsettling feeling deepened. I could hear the rustling again, this time more aggressive, almost insistent. I glanced at the vents above, imagining the figure lurking just out of sight. Finally, as the sun set and the office emptied, I was left alone with my thoughts. I could feel the shadows closing in, the walls of the office pressing down on me. My mind raced with possibilities. Was there truly something sinister lurking in the vents? The sounds escalated, growing louder and more frantic. I needed to know the truth. Gathering what little courage I had left, I made my way back to the maintenance closet. This time I was determined to confront whatever had been watching me. But as I stood before the access panel, my heart pounding in my chest, I could not shake the feeling that I was no longer just a curious observer. I was being drawn into something far darker than I could have ever imagined. With one last breath, I lifted the panel and climbed inside, knowing that whatever lay ahead would change everything. As I clambered into the darkness of the ventilation shaft, a chill crept down my spine. The air was stale, and the faint scent of something rancid lingered in the corners of my mind. My flashlight flickered ominously, casting weak beams of light that danced off the metal walls, creating shadowy figures that seemed to mock me. Each pulse of my heart felt like a countdown, echoing in the confined space. The noises had intensified, a chaotic blend of scratching and shuffling that made it hard to distinguish whether they came from the ventilation system or the depths of my own imagination. With every cautious crawl forward, I felt a growing sense of dread. The previous night's glimpse of those eyes lingered like a haunting whisper, urging me deeper into the unknown. I focused on my breathing, trying to steady my racing heart. The shaft was narrow, forcing me to crawl on my hands and knees. I could hear the faint hum of the office above, muffled but reassuring, a reminder that civilization was just a few feet away. Yet down here in the claustrophobic confines, I felt like a world away. Pushing forward, I remembered Mark. The thought of him brought a fresh wave of anxiety. Had he encountered the same entity I had? What if something had happened to him? My mind raced with scenarios, each darker than the last. I had to find out. I had to know if he was safe. I rounded a corner and the sound suddenly shifted. It was no longer just rustling. Now there were whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seeped through the metal walls like a chilling breeze. I froze, straining my ears to catch the words. But all I heard was a dissonance of voices, layered and overlapping, sending shivers down my spine. It was as if the shaft itself was alive, harboring secrets I was never meant to uncover. With a surge of determination, I pushed myself further. The ventilation system twisted and turned, an unending maze that seemed to taunt me. Each time I thought I was close to the end, another bend appeared, leading me deeper into darkness. The air grew colder, almost palpable, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. Then, as I rounded another corner, my flashlight flickered and dimmed. I cursed under my breath, banging it against my palm. The beam returned, revealing something that made my heart drop, strange symbols etched into the metal wall. They looked ancient, as if they belonged to a time long forgotten. I traced one with my finger. It felt cold and alien. Instinctively, I pulled my hand back. A creeping sense of wrongness washed over me. What had I stumbled upon? It felt like I was trespassing into a world that was never meant for me. But as the whispers grew louder, mingling with the scratching sounds, I realized I had already crossed that line. Continuing onward, the passage began to widen slightly, opening up into a small chamber. I shone my flashlight around, revealing walls covered in more symbols, intertwined with what looked like faded photographs. They depicted groups of people in strange rituals, their faces obscured by shadows. A knot tightened in my stomach. This was not just an abandoned maintenance shaft. This was a place of significance. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the tunnel, reverberating against the walls. I jumped, adrenaline coursing through me. The noise came from behind me, a resounding crash that shook the very foundation of the shaft. I whipped around, my heart pounding wildly. Had someone followed me? "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling as it bounced off the metal walls. There was no answer, just the oppressive silence that enveloped me once more. But I could feel it, something was out there, lurking just beyond the reach of my flashlight. Taking a deep breath, I turned back to face the chamber. I needed to know what this place was, what secrets it held. The whispers swirled around me like a tempest, and I could swear I felt a presence pressing against me, urging me to leave. But I pressed on, scanning the walls for any clues. As I moved closer to a particularly intricate symbol, I noticed something glinting in the corner of my eye. I turned to investigate, my heart racing. It was a small pendant, lying discarded on the ground. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. It was an ornate piece, shaped like an eye, with intricate patterns surrounding it. A chill ran through me. I remembered the stories I had heard about the university, the old legends of a secret society that once thrived in the shadows. They were said to have practiced ancient rituals, delving into forbidden knowledge. Was this pendant connected to them? The moment I thought it, a cold gust of air swept through the chamber, extinguishing my flashlight. Panic surged within me, enveloping me in darkness. I fumbled, desperately trying to turn it back on, but it remained lifeless in my hands. I was plunged into a void, the whispers now rising to a crescendo. Then in the pitch black I heard it, a low, guttural growl reverberating through the chamber. My instincts kicked in, and I felt a primal urge to run. But where? I was trapped in this narrow passage, surrounded by shadows that seemed to pulse with life. "Get out!" a voice roared from somewhere deep within the darkness, startling me. It was a warning, an imperative that echoed through my bones. I stumbled backward, heart racing, searching for any light, any escape. I turned toward the tunnel, my only way out. I could hear the growl intensifying, and the whispers became frantic, swirling around me like a storm. I took off, crawling as fast as I could, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The darkness pressed in, but I was fueled by a single thought: I had to escape. As I made my way back through the shaft, I could feel something behind me, a presence that seemed to chase me through the winding corridors. I crawled faster, driven by fear, the symbols flashing through my mind like warning signs. I had trespassed into a domain that was not mine, and now whatever resided in those shadows was angry. Finally, I reached the access panel, clawing at it desperately. I could feel the weight of the darkness closing in, the growls echoing in my ears. With one last effort, I pushed the panel open and scrambled out into the office, gasping for air. The fluorescent lights flickered back to life, casting harsh shadows across the room. I collapsed to the floor, trembling, my heart racing as I scanned the empty office. The whispers were gone, but the echoes of what I had encountered remained, reverberating through my mind. I had to find Mark. I had to understand what was happening. But deep down, I knew that the answers I sought were entwined in darkness, and whatever had been lurking in the shadows was far from finished with me. I lay on the cold, hard floor of the office, my chest heaving as I tried to regain my composure. The bright lights buzzed overhead, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness I had just escaped. I could still feel the remnants of that chilling presence creeping into my thoughts, taunting me with questions I wasn't ready to confront. I pushed myself up, shaking off the remnants of fear. The office was eerily quiet now, a stark silence that felt almost unnatural after the chaos of the ventilation shaft. I glanced around, searching for any sign of Mark. My heart sank as I remembered that he hadn't returned since he went to check the other side of the building. Panic surged again, more potent than before. "Mark," I called, my voice trembling slightly as it echoed off the walls. I stood brushing dust from my clothes and straining my ears for any response. But there was only silence. The sound of my own heartbeat thundered in my ears, filling the void left by the absent whispers. The thought of him alone in those tunnels filled me with dread. I had to find him, no matter what I had encountered. Gathering what little courage I had left, I moved toward the exit. The hallway felt long and foreboding, each step echoing as if announcing my presence to whatever might be lurking in the shadows. As I reached the door, I hesitated, glancing back into the dim office space. The chill of the air seemed to follow me, a reminder of what lay beneath the surface. I stepped outside, the familiar fluorescent lights casting an unflattering glare. But the moment I turned the corner, I noticed something unusual. The maintenance door that led to the other side of the building was ajar, swinging slightly as if inviting me in. I approached cautiously, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But the thought of Mark lost somewhere in the depths propelled me forward. I pushed the door open, the creaking sound cutting through the silence. Inside, the air was heavy and still, thick with the smell of dust and disuse. The corridor stretched before me, a shadowy path that felt like a lifeline to the unknown. As I stepped inside, I could hear a faint sound, muffled voices coming from deeper within. They were indistinct, yet the urgency in their tone was palpable. I strained to listen, trying to decipher the words, but they slipped away like grains of sand. With each step, I felt the atmosphere shift. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in around me. My flashlight flickered as I moved, creating ghostly shadows that danced in the periphery of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that eyes were tracking my every movement. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, merging with the echoes of my footsteps. My heart raced as I turned a corner, the corridor widening into another chamber. This one was different. There were remnants of something sinister. Symbols similar to those I had seen earlier were carved into the walls, illuminated by the harsh light of my flashlight. In the center of the room stood a makeshift altar, cluttered with strange objects, bones, candles, and what appeared to be old photographs. I recoiled, a sense of dread settling in my gut. This was a place of ritual, a point of convergence for something dark and ancient. I glanced around, searching for any sign of Mark, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the chamber, sending a jolt of adrenaline through me. I turned, pointing my flashlight toward the sound. My breath caught in my throat as I saw it, a shadow moving swiftly, almost fluidly, against the far wall. "Mark!" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. But the shadow didn't respond. It merely flitted away into the darkness. I took a step forward, compelled by a mixture of fear and urgency. I had to know if it was him, or if something more sinister was at play. As I approached the spot where I had seen the shadow, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air around me crackled with tension, and I could hear the whispers growing more frantic, urging me to leave, to turn back. But I pushed on, determined to find Mark and uncover the truth behind these walls. "Mark!" I called again, my voice rising in pitch as panic set in. I rounded a corner and found another door, this one heavy and ancient-looking. It was slightly ajar, a faint light spilling out from the cracks. I hesitated, my heart racing as I considered the implications of what lay beyond. The whispers intensified, wrapping around me like a cold embrace, warning me of the dangers that lay ahead. But I had come too far. I had to know what was happening. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking ominously. Inside, the room was dimly lit by flickering candles, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. My stomach turned as I took in the sight, symbols carved deep into the stone, and in the center of the room, a figure kneeling before a larger altar. "Mark!" I cried out, my voice breaking. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face I recognized but barely comprehended. It was Mark, his eyes wide and glazed, filled with an unsettling mix of fear and reverence. He seemed different, as if he had been altered by the very air around him. "Get away from here," he whispered urgently, his voice hoarse. "You don't understand." I felt a chill run through me. What are you doing? We need to get out of here. I stepped closer, desperate to reach him. But before I could reach him, the ground trembled beneath my feet, and the walls echoed with a low, resonant growl. I froze, my heart pounding as the shadows around us shifted, twisting and morphing into something darker. The whispers became a cacophony, each voice pleading and demanding, drowning out my thoughts. "Leave," Mark shouted, panic overtaking his earlier calm. "You have to go now." But before I could respond, the shadow surged forward, enveloping him in a dark mist. I felt a pull, an overwhelming force trying to drag me into the depths of that darkness. I stumbled back, gasping for breath as the chaos erupted around us. In that moment, everything changed. I realized this was not just about Mark or me. It was about something far older, something that had been waiting for us to trespass. I had to escape. With every ounce of strength, I turned and fled, racing back through the chamber. The whispers clawed at my mind, trying to dissuade me, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out, had to escape the dark that threatened to consume us both. As I burst back into the corridor, the cold air hit me like a wave. I ran, not looking back, each step echoing with urgency. The growls behind me intensified, and the very walls seemed to ripple with the force of the shadows. I pushed myself harder, fueled by fear and the desperate need to survive. I could hear the voices behind me, whispering my name, beckoning me back. But I was determined nothing would drag me into that abyss. Finally, I reached the maintenance door and flung it open, stumbling back into the office. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, my heart racing. The lights were still on, but the sense of safety was fleeting. I knew I had escaped, but the weight of the darkness loomed just beyond the door. I had to get Mark. I had to find a way to save him from whatever was now haunting those tunnels. But deep down, I knew that I was venturing further into a nightmare, and the shadows were far from finished with me. The fluorescent lights buzzed ominously above me, casting an unflattering glow on the chaos that had just unfolded. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my breath still coming in ragged gasps. The whispers lingered in my mind, echoing like a haunting melody I couldn't shake off. The office felt unreal, a flimsy barrier between me and the horrors lurking in the tunnels below. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to collect my thoughts. I had escaped, but at what cost? Mark was still down there, ensnared by whatever dark force had claimed the tunnels. The image of his glazed eyes haunted me, a silent scream trapped behind a veil of fear. I had to go back, there was no other choice. I shook my head, attempting to clear the fog of panic clouding my mind. But the shadows I had just fled began to creep back into my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, waiting for the moment I would let my guard down. Each creak of the building felt amplified, each gust of wind a reminder that I was not alone. I glanced at my watch, time was slipping away. I had no idea how long I had been gone, but I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to act, and I needed to act now. With a shaky breath, I grabbed my flashlight from the desk and made my way back toward the maintenance door. As I stepped through, the chill hit me like a wall. The shadows were thicker now, almost tangible in their presence. I turned on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. The corridor loomed before me, filled with uncertainty and dread. Every step echoed as if the very walls were remembering my footsteps, reminding me of the terror I had just experienced. I moved slowly, listening intently for any sound, any sign of Mark. The faint whispers continued, rising and falling like a tide, urging me forward while simultaneously warning me to turn back. I swallowed hard, pushing the unease deep down. I had to focus. I had to find him. As I made my way deeper into the tunnels, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My flashlight flickered and I quickly tapped it, hoping to restore its brightness. The shadows seemed to dance in response, taunting me with their movement. I pressed on, determined to reach the chamber where I had seen Mark. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I turned a corner and paused, spotting the symbols on the walls again. They glimmered faintly, as if alive. I leaned closer, tracing a finger over the carvings, ancient runes, their meanings lost to time, yet emanating an unsettling energy. Suddenly a noise broke the stillness. It was a low growl reverberating through the air. My heart raced as I spun around, aiming my flashlight at the source of the sound. Nothing, just shadows shifting and swirling like smoke. Mark, I shouted, my voice breaking the silence. Where are you? The only response was the echo of my own words, bouncing back at me from the darkness. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let fear control me. I had to find him. As I approached the altar room, the air grew colder, thick with anticipation. I pushed the door open, my breath catching in my throat. The chamber was empty, the altar now eerily quiet. The remnants of the ritual lay scattered, but Mark was nowhere to be seen. Panic clawed at my insides. Mark, I called again, desperation spilling into my voice. I stepped further inside, scanning the room for any sign of him. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, creating grotesque shapes that seemed to watch me. Then I noticed it, a glint of something on the altar. I approached cautiously, my eyes widening as I recognized it. A photograph, its edges frayed and yellowed with age. I picked it up, heart racing as I realized it depicted a group of students, their faces blurred but familiar. And there in the center was Mark, smiling, carefree, oblivious to the danger that surrounded him. A chill ran down my spine. How had this gotten here? The photo felt like a sinister omen, a reminder of the life he once had before stepping into the shadows of these tunnels. I dropped it as if it burned my fingers, scanning the room once more. The shadows shifted again, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, shining my flashlight into the darkness. My breath hitched as I saw it, a figure cloaked in shadow, standing at the entrance to the chamber. Mark, I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure stepped forward and my heart sank. It was Mark, it was something else entirely. Its features were obscured, but I could see a glint of eyes watching me, a predatory gleam that sent terror coursing through my veins. Leave this place, it rasped, its voice echoing like a distant memory, filled with malice and warning. You do not belong here. I backed away, the instinct to flee rising within me. Where Mark? What have you done to him? I shouted, anger flaring up against my fear. It stepped closer, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak. He is lost, and you will be too if you do not turn back, it warned, the growl deepening in its tone. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, my feet pounding against the cold stone floor. The growl followed me, reverberating off the walls as I fled back down the corridor. I could feel the darkness clawing at my heels, trying to drag me back into the depths of despair. I ran blindly, panic blinding me as I stumbled through the maze of tunnels. My flashlight flickered again, the beam wavering as I turned a corner. I had to find a way out. I had to escape this nightmare. As I rounded another bend, I caught a glimpse of movement in my periphery, a fleeting shadow that made my heart race. "Mark," I shouted, praying it was him. But the shadow vanished, leaving me alone with my fear once more. I pressed on, pushing myself harder. Each step felt like a battle against an unseen force, the whispers growing louder, urging me to turn back. The air grew heavier, thick with an oppressive energy that threatened to suffocate me. Finally, I saw a light ahead, flickering like a jewel. I rushed toward it, my heart pounding with hope. As I drew closer, I recognized it, the exit, a door leading back to the office. I could taste freedom. But just as I reached for the handle, a chilling realization swept over me. The shadows were closing in, swirling around me like a living entity. I turned, heart racing as I faced the darkness. "Mark," I cried out one last time, desperation overwhelming my senses. The growl returned, closer this time, and I felt the cold breath of the creature against my skin. I could almost hear its voice whispering in the depths of my mind, urging me to surrender to the shadows. But I refused. With a final surge of will, I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against it, panting, the darkness clawing at the other side. I was safe for now. But Mark was still down there, lost to whatever nightmare had taken hold of him. And I knew that the shadows were not done with me yet. They would come for me again, and next time I might not escape. The battle was just beginning. The door slammed shut behind me with a resounding thud, the sound reverberating in the stillness of the office. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath, my heart racing wildly in my chest. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously above, casting erratic shadows that danced around me like phantoms. I was safe, at least for the moment, but the knowledge that Mark was still trapped in the clutches of that darkness gnawed at my insides. I pushed myself away from the door, forcing my legs to move as I scanned the office for anything that could help me understand what was happening. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of what I had witnessed. The ancient symbols, the figure cloaked in shadow, and the whispers that echoed through the tunnels, they all pointed to something far more sinister than I had ever imagined. My gaze fell on a stack of papers strewn across a desk. I hurried over, hoping to find something, anything, that could provide insight into the horrors that lurked beneath the university. The papers were filled with notes, sketches of the tunnels, and references to rituals that had taken place long before my time. The more I read, the clearer it became that this place was steeped in a history I couldn't begin to comprehend. As I flipped through the pages, a particular phrase caught my eye, the shadows of the forgotten. It spoke of a cult that had once thrived on campus, performing dark rituals to commune with entities that were never meant to be summoned. My skin prickled at the thought, had they succeeded? Was Mark now a part of this twisted legacy? A loud bang echoed through the office, making me jump. My heart raced as I glanced at the door, the shadows shifting ominously in the corners of the room. I was not alone. The darkness was still there, lurking just out of sight, waiting for its chance to strike. I felt the urge to hide, to flee, but I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. Mark knighted me. I gathered my resolve and turned back to the papers, desperate to find a clue that could lead me back to him. One document detailed a specific ritual meant to strengthen the bond between the living and the entities of the shadow world. It described a chamber one deep within the tunnels, where the veil between the two realms was thinnest. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that it might be where Mark had been taken. As I continued to read, I stumbled upon a list of names, students who had gone missing over the years, their fates intertwined with the cult's dark practices. My stomach churned as I recognized several names. Some were from my own cohort, people I had seen in the hallways, laughing and sharing stories. Had they also ventured into the depths and never returned? Suddenly a low growl broke the stillness, echoing through the office walls. I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my grip as panic surged within me. It was closer now, the darkness whispering my name. I could feel it, a palpable presence that seeped through the cracks, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Enough, I shouted, the defiance in my voice surprising even me. You won't take me too. The growling intensified, resonating through the room as I backed away from the desk. The shadows twisted and writhed, coalescing into a form that was both familiar and utterly terrifying. It was as if the very essence of fear was manifesting before me, a grotesque amalgamation of nightmares. I raised the flashlight, its beam piercing through the dark. For a moment I could see it clearly, a creature with elongated limbs and hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. My breath hitched as I felt the weight of its gaze, heavy and predatory. In that instant, something primal ignited within me. I was not merely a victim in this story, I was a force of resistance. I had come too far, lost too much to back down now. With a burst of adrenaline, I lunged for the door, flinging it open and racing down the hallway toward the maintenance stairs. The growl followed, a chilling reminder that I was being hunted. My feet pounded against the cold concrete as I descended the stairs, adrenaline propelling me forward. Each step was a fight against the encroaching darkness, each breath a reminder of what I had to lose. As I reached the bottom, I paused, heart pounding, scanning the dimly lit corridor before me. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, the walls echoing with the whispers of those who had come before me. I had to find the chamber. I had to bring Mark back. I turned and began moving down the narrow passageway, flashlight illuminating the damp walls covered in moss and ancient symbols. The echoes of my footsteps sounded lonely and hollow, amplifying my sense of isolation. The deeper I went, the more the air thickened with an oppressive presence, as if the very walls were closing in on me. Then I noticed something, an opening up ahead, partially obscured by darkness. As I approached, I saw the faint glow of candlelight flickering inside. My heart raced, this had to be it. The chamber from the notes. I stepped inside cautiously, feeling the heat of the candles wash over me. The room was circular, its walls adorned with more of the eerie symbols that had haunted my thoughts. In the center stood an altar, similar to the one I had seen before, surrounded by remnants of old rituals, bones, remnants of candles, and strange artifacts. But what caught my eye was the figure slumped over the altar. "Mark!" I shouted, rushing forward. I could see him, his face pale, his eyes closed. He looked lifeless, the light from the candles dancing eerily over him. As I reached out to shake him awake, the shadows surged around the room, the growls escalating into a chorus of anguished cries. Panic surged through me. I couldn't let this be the end. I knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders, shaking him gently. "Mark, wake up. We have to go." His eyes fluttered open, confusion washing over his face as he blinked against the candlelight. Where are we?" he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "Here, take my hand," I urged, pulling him up. But just as I did, the shadows coiled around us, tightening like a vice. I could feel their cold grasp on my ankles, pulling me back toward the altar. "No, we can't stay here," I shouted, fighting against the darkness. Mark looked at me, fear in his eyes, but he nodded, gripping my hand tightly. Together we stumbled toward the exit, but the shadows lashed out, enveloping us in a shroud of despair. The growls transformed into whispers, each word dripping with malice. "You cannot escape. You are ours." With a surge of determination, I focused on the doorway ahead, the flickering light beyond promising safety. "Run!" I yelled, our feet pounding against the ground as we pushed through the darkness. The shadows twisted and writhed, clawing at our backs as we sprinted, desperation fueling our escape. I could feel the weight of their presence, the whispers echoing in my ears. "You will never leave." Just when I thought the darkness would swallow us whole, we burst through the threshold, tumbling into the hallway. We skidded to a stop, panting, the oppressive weight of the shadows lifting slightly. But as we turned to catch our breath, the growls returned, echoing off the walls. They were not far behind. "We have to keep moving," I shouted, pulling Mark along as we raced toward the stairs. The tension in the air was palpable, the shadows still chasing us, angry and relentless. I could hear their whispers growing louder, a cacophony of voices crying out in fury. "You cannot escape the past." With each step, I felt the urgency intensifying. We were so close to the exit, but the darkness was relentless, clawing at us with each passing second. The light above beckoned like a promise of freedom, but it felt miles away. As we reached the stairs, I could see the door at the top. I pushed myself harder, dragging Mark with me. "We can make it," I yelled, the determination coursing through me. But just as we reached the final step, a shadow lunged forward, wrapping around my legs like a serpent. I fell to the ground, pain shooting through my body as I struggled against its grip. Mark turned, his face a mask of horror. "Help me," I screamed, desperation flooding my voice. He rushed back, reaching for my outstretched hand as the darkness threatened to pull me under. "I won't leave you," he shouted, his grip firm. With all my strength, I pulled myself toward him, our hands clasping tightly. The shadows hissed, the growls growing louder as they swirled around us, desperate to drag me back into their depths. "Now," Mark yelled, pulling with all his might. I felt the weight of the darkness pulling at my core, but as he yanked me up, I broke free from its grasp. We surged forward, bursting through the door and collapsing onto the floor of the office. The growls faded behind us, the shadows receding as we gasped for air. I looked up, heart racing, as Mark and I exchanged wide-eyed glances, a mix of relief and terror flooding our expressions. We had escaped, but the weight of the shadows still lingered in the back of my mind. I knew this wasn't over. "What just happened?" Mark panted, looking around the room in confusion. "Where were we?" "The tunnels," I replied, my voice shaky. "They were trying to take us. We need to figure out what's going on before they come back." Mark nodded, determination igniting in his eyes. "Then let's find a way to stop this for good." As we rose to our feet, I realized that the shadows would not rest until they claimed what was theirs. Together, we had to confront the darkness, uncover the truth behind the cult, and rescue those who had been lost to the shadows. The battle was far from over, and our fight had only just begun. Thank you for listening till the end. I hope you were able to relax and will now get a good rest. And don't worry, new stories are already on the way for tomorrow, so don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to stay connected. Now have a good night. See you in the next episode.